Welcome to worship with United Christian Church. I'm Pastor Michele Schenk and I'm serving as liturgist today. Reverend Bill Garrett will be sharing the message, and Reverend Bill Bloom is our minister of music. Huge round of gratitude goes out to our tech team of Edie Lowenstein, Sue Lowenstein, and Sue's daughter Alexa Fisher. We have several birthdays to celebrate this week. Emmy Black is turning 1 year old. Happy birthday to Emmy. Pauline Durr is also having a big birthday, a little bit bigger than Emmy. John Arendt is celebrating his birthday, but we don't know how big his is. But happy birthday to each of you, and I invite you to send out some virtual well wishes or send a card or message to wish them well. Later in the service, we'll be sharing communion, and I invite you to pause this message here to go and get your communion elements of juice and cookie or bread, and I'll meet you right back here. Well, we are not physically in church. Many of us are staying connected on our Facebook page, and our companion program has been a godsend to many, myself included. If you have any joys or concerns that you'd like included in our weekly inspiration moment, please be sure to email them to Bill Garrett. Our call to worship is based on Habakkuk, chapter 1, and as we enter into this deeper moment of the sacred together, let's pause for a moment to breathe and open our hearts. How long must I cry, O God, and get no answer from you? God is still speaking. Even when I yell, violence is all around, it seems like you aren't doing anything about it. God is still speaking. Disaster and violence, conflict and controversy are raging all around me. God is still speaking. The wicked surround the innocent and injustice prevails. God is still speaking. Are we listening?
And gives our vision voice. The poor are rich, the weak are strong, the foolish ones are wise. Tell all who mourn outcast belong, who perishes will rise. Oh, for a world preparing for God's glorious reign of peace, where time and tears will be no more, and all but love will cease.
It's good to be able to be with you again today. It is very appreciated that you're willing to spend your time as we join together during this time of worship. You there, us here, and yet all together. So thank you for being with us this Sunday. Not too long ago, I was reminded of the power of short phrases, that sometimes it's possible to convey a really major idea in a short, maybe 3-word phrase. Let me give you some examples. One phrase that I think has changed the world, has certainly changed people's lives, is simply, I love you. It's a phrase that hopefully you have heard and you have shared somewhere in your lives, and maybe repeatedly, where it's a bond that is affirmed. A bond which says, yes, you and I together, we are special. We are committed to each other. We are going to be with each other in such a deep, meaningful way. I love you. That may be one of the most meaningful questions that we have answered in our lives. That yes, somebody loves us. And what a difference that makes. There's another three-word phrase that I have found has significant meaning. It's a simple, tell me more. Maybe you're in a conversation and there's some questions going on. Maybe there's some even anxiety going on. Or maybe it's just a curiosity. But when you throw into the conversation, tell me more, that opens up dialogue, that opens up the opportunity to find out more than just what be found on the surface level. Tell me more. Indicates that you truly are interested in what they have to say. You're not just proclaiming your view, but you want to find out what they believe. Another one, for example, is now get up. Now get up. I've heard that spoken to me before, and I've spoken those words to others. And it's often at a time when there's a struggle going on. It recognizes that somebody has been knocked down, somebody has been hurt, somebody is struggling. Brené Brown, in her book Rising Strong, talks a lot about that. That it's not if, but when we get knocked down, how will we respond? And one approach to it is, he says that we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. And sometimes when we are knocked down, we have been knocked down because we've tried something. We have put ourselves at risk because we're trying to achieve something that might seem bigger than us. And maybe we succeed, maybe we don't. But if we try hard enough, long enough, we will get knocked down. And then the choice is what to do. Now, get up. Now get up. Those are actually very positive words. Just recently, we have all been reminded of the power of the three-word phrase, I can't breathe. There is no doubt that these three words have fueled so much energy and passion in the world about it's time, it's past time to do something about racism. Shonda Jaw, a wonderful colleague from a few years ago, wrote a book, Pre-Post-Racial America. And she identifies it very clearly that there's been this time when we thought, we patted ourselves on the back that, see, we're past racism. We're living in a post-racism America. No, we're not. That was the meaning of her title and the stories in her book, Pre-Post-Racial America. I Can't Breathe has initiated what needed to have been happening a long time ago. Well, I have another three-word phrase. Let's feed them. This comes from Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the story about the feeding of the 5,000. And it's a simple story. All of their versions are pretty much the same. Jesus has been with his followers. They've followed him to a deserted place. He's been speaking to them. And they have been there. They've been listening intently. Oh, I don't worry about whether it was 5,000 or whatever number. It's a large group. And they've been there. And his followers come to him and say, Jesus, These people have been here a long time. It's getting late. We need to send them home so they can refresh themselves, so they can eat. Then maybe they can come back tomorrow. But they need to go away so they can be fed. Jesus turns to them and simply says, let's feed them. Now I know that's not the exact words, but that's the exact meaning of what he was helping them understand. Let's feed them. In many ways, I think this was a lesson in being prepared to his disciples about what they were going to face at some point. Again, not if they ran into challenges, but when they did, how would they handle that? There's a couple things that I have learned about this process. I think Jesus was introducing them to the concepts of attitudes of scarcity and abundance. Scarcity, you see, that was very much present there. His disciples came back immediately and said, "Oh, we can't do that. We don't have any food. We don't have enough money. The food trucks aren't running here. We need to send them home." And Jesus says, no. We have all that we need right here. You see, I came across an interesting definition of scarcity and abundance. Scarcity often has us looking at external conditions. What are we facing? How tall is the mountain? How much do we need to do? It looks at the outside and takes an assessment, makes an evaluation of how big the problem is. And the problem with scarcity is that often what that does is it lets us look at what we have in comparison to what is needed possibly, and we typically come up short. We can't do this. We can't accomplish this. Jesus tells them, no, let's feed them. And clearly states this attitude of abundance that, we have enough. It will work somehow. That's the message of this story. It's not necessarily that all 5,000 were fed. That's nice. But I think the real essence of this story is that Jesus said, no, let's take care of it ourselves. Let's don't run away from the problem because it seems overwhelming. Let's take care of it. Let's engage in this. Scarcity versus abundance. Now, many years ago, I came across a book that I think talks about the attitude of abundance. It was an interesting book. They played with a quiet mind. It was actually written by a pastor, Charles Kemp, Reverend Dr. Charles Kemp. He was the minister of pastoral care of a large church, University Christian Church in Fort Worth. That was actually the church that my wife Nancy grew up in, and that's the church that we were married in. And Dr. Kemp had written a number of books about pastoral care, but he intertwined these books with his love for the game of golf. He was a golfer. He was quite good at golfing. He created in his schedule time to do that because he had found meaning in that as well. And one thing that he had done was a lot of research, because in this one book, They Played with a Quiet Mind, he talks about all the successful golfers and how they were able to live with an attitude of abundance in the way they played, in the way they lived their life. Two examples, for example, one was Walter Hagen. Now, he lived in the early part of the 1900s, but he is one of the most successful golfers of all time. Walter Hagen had a big personality, and he relied on his own skills. He came to a golf course for a tournament or an exhibition, and he wasn't concerned about the golf course. He wasn't concerned about his opponent. He wasn't concerned about the weather. He wasn't concerned about whatever it might be that could interfere with his focus. Instead, he was convinced he had the right game for that moment. It said kind of a funny quote that he would often step onto the first tee box at the very beginning of the golf tournament, and he'd look around and see the crowd, and he'd go over to them and say, "Now, who do you think is going to come in second?" Because he knew he was going to come in first. And he usually did. In many ways, they will say it wasn't because his skills were any better than the other golfers. He just knew he was going to win. An attitude of abundance. He wasn't looking out there to see what the problem was. He was looking in here to see what the solution was. Ben Hogan was another very famous, very successful golfer during that era. Ben Hogan approached it a little bit differently. He created this understanding that when he walked onto a golf course, there was not going to be a single shot that he would have to make that he hadn't made before. He created a whole different methodology of practice. Very methodical. Very practiced in every single shot. He had made every shot you can imagine under every condition thousands of times. So he was not concerned about the golf course. He was not concerned about his opponent. He was not concerned about the weather or anything else. He knew he would have the skills to make it work. They played with a quiet mind. They didn't get unraveled. They didn't get concerned. They didn't get frustrated. They didn't become anxious. These were the champions. They had found out how to live and play with this attitude of abundance, not wondering why something couldn't work, but instead why they could make it work. I think this was exactly what Jesus was trying to get his disciples to understand, that they would face challenges. It wasn't going to be if, but when they did. And how would they respond to that? Would they immediately start taking note of, well, the emperor is too strong, he won't allow this? Or the crowds are too unruly and they don't like what we're saying? Or how do we create new churches? How do we do that? We don't have enough. They were looking externally. He would say, no, it's time for us to look inside and find out that it is up to us to feed them. And feeding didn't mean just food. It meant reaching out to them with this message of hope, the good news, reaching out to them and talking about what it meant to serve one another, what it meant to reach out to the poor in spirit, to reach out to those who were alienated, to reach out to those who were marginalized. How would they feed them? They would have to draw from their inner strength, their inner willpower to some respect. I remember hearing not too long ago also about that what we desire is harmony. But very simply, how we achieve harmony is through perseverance. That we realize that it is our role. It is up to us to stay with this desire, this willingness to make a difference. We can only feed them in every aspect of what that means if we believe that what we have to offer is enough. And then apply it. Then apply it and make a difference. Well, my question is then, what would abundance look like in our lives? In our ministries? Both as individuals and as the church. What would it look like for us to be able to reach out that way and make such a difference? Well, I think we can rely on that 4-word phrase from the United Church of Christ that I cherish. The one that says, God is still speaking. So maybe we need to ask this question of what is God saying to us in this time and place? What is God speaking? And I think we can relate back to some of these 3-word phrases. I think the first thing that we could say is God is still speaking, I love you. I've already mentioned how meaningful that phrase is. But think about it, that for God, for us to hear these words and us to believe it, that we are loved unconditionally. That question has been answered. We are cherished. As Paul Tillich said, accept that you are accepted. And how that is so difficult to do sometimes. Because let's face it, sometimes we don't even like ourselves. But that doesn't matter. Because when we go back just a little bit deeper and hear God speaking, I love you. I love you, God says. But the second thing that the statement that God might be saying to us is, now get up. Now get up. You see, we cannot just sit still. The other 3-word phrase, I can't breathe, has challenged us like not in recent years. Oh, the problems are the same. They haven't changed. But this has really brought it to such a forefront that congregationally, we can't sit still. We have to get up. But it's true that we're going to face challenges. We are going to see the obstacles. If we look out at the world from an attitude of scarcity, we're going to close shop and just say we can't make a difference. One of my favorite singers, Carrie Newcomer, and I've mentioned her a few times, and I'll probably mention her again. She came up with a beautiful song, You Can Do This Hard Thing. It's been a few years. She created it, and it's been recreated. She did a fascinating thing. She invited all of her fans, her followers, to sing along with her. So they sent in videos of them singing that same song. She combined them all. Her or she and others singing that song and rotating people through. You saw how many people. And it's a very powerful video. Well, this song originates actually from a Montessori school teacher that was a friend of hers, who she would use the phrase, you can do this hard thing, in working with her students. And Carrie understood that's true, and so she started applying it to her life, some of her experiences. She starts out kind of light-heartedly, if you will. The first song goes, there at the table, with my head in my hands, a column of numbers I just could not understand. You said, add these together, carry the 2, now you. And follows up with the chorus of, you can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. I know it's not easy, but I believe it is so. You can do this hard thing. She goes deeper as the song goes on, talking more about real life situations, not just a math problem. Here we stand breathless and pressed in hard times, hearts hung like laundry on backyard clothes lines. Impossible just takes a little more time. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. Now get up. It's not always easy to do that. Sometimes it is a hard thing to do, and yet that's what God is calling us to do, to get up. And then God says, and now let's feed them. It's not just getting up, it's doing something about it. Maybe it's in our own lives. Sometimes we need to feed ourselves. Maybe it's in our family, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's somebody that just is hurting, and we need to reach out to them and feed them. You know, the world is hungry. The world is hungry for a sense, just as God says, that they are loved. And we reach out to them and invite them to now get up. That's how we feed them. Or maybe it's some of the cultural issues that we face. We need to help feed the world with answers, with ways to change what is gone so wrong. Let's feed them. And let's do it from an attitude of abundance, where we understand that yes, the obstacles are real. They are real. But so is our talent, so is our skill, so is our commitment, so is our perseverance, so is our belief that together we can make a difference. Let's feed them. Oh, these 3 word phrases combined with this God is still speaking. I think it's a call to us. Not just a challenge, but it's a calling to us. For us to respond, for us to have this confidence that says, yes, we can. So, the question then, I guess, isn't if God is still speaking. I'm convinced God is still speaking. But are we listening? And you know, as far as I'm concerned, yes, we are. Today, we have an opportunity in our own lives, in the lives around us, I dare say in the world, for us to proclaim what God is saying to us and living it in such a way that the world will never be the same. These 3 short phrases that can change the world. I love you. Now get up and let's feed them. Amen.
Come and find the quiet center in the crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are freed. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we can see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be. Silence is a friend who claims us, cools the heat and slows the pace. God it is who speaks and names us, knows our being, touches base, making space within our thinking, lifting shades to show the sun, raising courage when we're shrinking, finding scope for faith begun. In the Spirit, let us travel, open to each other's pain. Let our loves and fears unravel, celebrate the space we gain. There's a place for deepest dreaming, there's a time for heart to care. In the Spirit's lively scheming, there is always room to spare.
As we transition into our time of communion, let us first share together the Lord's Prayer beginning with Father, Mother, God. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Jesus asked to be remembered in his simple meal around a common table, a picture of sharing and companionship, openness and equality. He welcomes us to the table, telling of the still-speaking God who sits among us in friendship, with the greatest and least in the eyes of humanity, but sisters and brothers in the eyes of God. This is the bread of our union, broken to reveal how the world might be fed. This is the cup of our sustenance, poured out for the quenching of everyone's thirst. All things are ready. Join me by sharing your communion elements, bread for your journey, and the cup of love poured out for all people. Amen.
I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in deepest sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright, who will bear my light to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them, they turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them, my hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard
Here we are once again, ready now to go into the world, into the streets, wherever we may be led. And I want to once again affirm these words that we have shared this day. The words that say, we can do this hard thing. Whether it's from Carrie Newcomer, whether it's from Brene Brown, whether it's from the thousands of people who have gone before us, who have struggled and said and lived, we can do this hard thing. Just as Jesus said to his followers, we can do this hard thing. And we must. The world needs us to help change the world. So once again, I share these words, these phrases that I'm convinced God is still speaking. I love you. Now get up and let's feed them. For as we receive and believe these words, this will become our life so that we might impact others. So let us go into the world. Let us be as God has created and called us to be. Let us know that we can do this hard thing. Because God is still speaking and we are still listening. Go, my friends, in peace and knowing that we can do this hard thing. Amen.
Hi, this is Sandra Kelsey. I'm in my backyard again so you can see what I get to look at every morning, and this is my Minute for Mother Earth for the week. There are organizations that exist to care about our environment. This is the good news. One of these is the Environmental Defense Fund. But much better news is that they can't do it alone. We need every day to be aware of our part in this, so we need to stay informed. I wanted to share some of the accomplishments that have happened. Courts blocked unnecessary pipeline from Pennsylvania to New Jersey. There was a reprieve for the sage grouse that was becoming extinct across the habitat in the West. They provided a task force for safer baby food. Belize protects a precious reef. And in Indonesia, a treetop surveillance system was placed for rogue loggers. A slogan from the Norway University of Science and Technology, and this is my handmade sign, says green and happy. People who take steps to reduce their environmental impacts are 11 to 13% happier than those who don't.
Good morning.
Peace begins with saying sorry.
Peace begins with not hurting others.
Peace begins with honesty and trust.
Peace begins with showing cooperation and respect.
Peace begins with me.
Go in peace.
Go in peace.
Hi guys, I'm Adriana. Obviously, you know who I am. I'm Edie's granddaughter and Sue's daughter. And I'm here with my good friend Chen, who grew up in China, so he speaks fluent Mandarin. And for our Peace Be With You segment, I'm going to say Peace Be With You, and then he's going to respond in the Mandarin mean of Peace Be With You. So Chen, Peace Be With You.
平安与你同在.
Hello, it's Linda McGowan here at the ERA Food Pantry, where you can see we have bags and boxes, and then we have produce and meats that we give out, and we have the food from McCaffrey's and other places that are donated, and then we put the food out here and people come through, so we have a little bit of a line this morning. Peace be with you all.